The cry in the alley rain fell hard on the metallic streets of Khazar 7, a busy trade world where aliens from many galaxies came and went. The air was cold. Neon lights flickered above quiet shops. It was late night. Most beings rushed to get out of the storm. But in a narrow alley, a small voice broke the silence. "Please, please help my mom," a young alien child screamed, her hands shaking as she cried over a woman lying on the cold ground. Her skin was a soft purple, and her eyes glowed bright yellow with fear. Her tiny body was soaked, but she did not care. Her mother lay beside her, shaking badly, her mouth slightly open and her eyes rolled back. People passed by the alley, aliens with strange faces, long coats and robotic guards, but no one stopped. Some turned their heads away, others looked with cold eyes, one even whispered, "Cursed family," before walking faster. The little girl sobbed harder. "Someone help. Anyone. Please." Then someone finally did stop. A human. He wore a long, brown coat and carried a worn-out bag. His boots splashed in a puddle as he turned toward the sound. His name was Jackson Ward, an off-world engineer who had come to Khazar 7 to fix mining machines. He had no idea this night would change everything. He walked into the alley and saw the child kneeling over the woman. Jackson looked around. "Where is everyone? Why won't anyone help?" The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide. "You're human. Humans fix things. Please fix my mom. She won't stop shaking." Jackson dropped to his knees beside them. The mother's body was twitching. Her breath was shallow. Foam dripped from the side of her mouth. Jackson opened his bag quickly and pulled out a small med scanner. He scanned the woman's body. A red warning flashed. Severe nerve damage detected. Unknown parasite activity. Jackson frowned. "What the hell?" He checked her pulse. Weak. Her temperature was dropping. He grabbed a thermal blanket and covered her. The little girl held her mother's hand tightly. "What's your name, kid?" Jackson asked gently. "Miri," she said between tears. "Please don't let her die." Jackson nodded. "I'll do my best. But I need answers." "What happened to her?" Miri shook her head. "I don't know. We were running from bad men. Then she screamed and fell. Then she started shaking like this. No one would help. They all said she's cursed." Jackson looked around again. He noticed shadows watching him from the street. One alien, a tall figure with glowing red eyes, stepped closer. "You shouldn't touch her," the alien said with a rough voice. "She's marked. You help her, you risk yourself." "She's sick," Jackson replied. "She needs medical care." The alien snorted. "She's not sick, she's infected with something not meant to be cured." And then he walked away. Jackson looked back at Miri. "Is she contagious?" "I don't know," Miri cried. "She's my mom. I just want her to be okay." Jackson bit his lip. He looked at the scanner again. He had never seen this type of parasite before. It was in her spine, spreading through her nervous system. He reached into his bag and pulled out a sedative spray. Carefully, he injected it into the woman's neck. Her body calmed slightly. "She needs real help," he said. "But if the clinics won't take her..." Miri looked up at him with hope. "You'll help, right? You won't leave us?" Jackson sighed and looked down at the shivering woman. He had been through wars. He had treated wounded soldiers, broken machines, and crushed bones. But this? A mother on the edge of death and a child begging for mercy? He stood up and lifted the woman in his arms. "Yes," he said. "I'll help, even if no one else will." Miri's eyes filled with fresh tears, but this time they were not just from fear. There was a tiny spark of hope. As Jackson carried the woman out of the alley, he noticed a group of aliens whispering to each other. One of them pointed at him. Another pulled out a communicator. Something was wrong. Jackson felt it in his gut. This wasn't just sickness. This was something much bigger, and he had just stepped into it. The diagnosis. No one wanted. The rain still fell outside. But inside Jackson's rented workshop, the silence was heavy. Miri sat on a metal crate, eyes fixed on her mother, who now lay on a makeshift bed covered in thermal sheets. The lights buzzed softly, and the old generator hummed in the corner. Jackson had locked the doors and closed the blinds. He didn't trust the eyes watching him in the alley. Something about the way the crowd whispered. It made his skin crawl. Miri's mother was breathing, barely, but her body still twitched now and then, as if something inside her was pulling invisible strings. Jackson attached sensors to her neck, chest, and spine. He connected them to his old military med scanner, a device he hadn't used in years. The screen flickered. A few seconds passed, then the screen turned red. Warning: parasitic infection. Detected life form: unknown. Synthetic designed neural leech. Stage: advanced. Host system compromised. Jackson stared at the words. Synthetic designed, he whispered. He zoomed in on the scan. The parasite wasn't natural. It had wires, hooks, and tiny moving parts. It had been built, not born. It wrapped around the woman's spine like a vine, pulsing with every nerve. Signal. This wasn't a sickness. This was sabotage. Miri looked up. What does it say? Jackson hesitated. Your mom. She's not just sick. Someone put this inside her. Miri's face twisted in confusion. Put it inside? But why? Jackson didn't answer, not yet. He had more questions than she did. He ran the parasite's design through his database. The match came from a locked file labeled Project Nightroot, discontinued bioweapon research. It had been shut down by the Galactic Union decades ago. So why was it inside this woman? Why now? Before he could go deeper, a loud bang hit the IT door. Jackson froze. Another bang. He grabbed Miri and whispered, Stay here, don't make a sound. He peeked through a crack in the blinds. 3 armored aliens stood outside. One had a long scanner rod. Another held a stunner rifle. The third had the patch of the Zari district enforcers. Jackson's heart beat faster. The enforcers didn't usually come out this late unless someone had reported him. Searching for illegal medical activity, one of the soldiers said. We received a tip. A human is treating a black-tagged subject. Miri tugged on Jackson's coat. What's a black-tagged? It means, he whispered, someone wants your mother dead. No help. No cure. No one even allowed to try. The enforcers knocked again. Open the door or we'll break it. Jackson looked at Miri. We have to go, now. He rushed to his tool cabinet and pulled out a hidden wall panel. Behind it, a tunnel dropped into the sewer line. He picked up Miri's mother carefully and placed her in a hover sled. It hovered just above the ground, powered by a weak anti-grav, or he handed Miri a flashlight. Lead the way, stay close, don't stop. Together they escaped down the narrow tunnel. Behind them, the enforcers kicked the door open and stormed the workshop, only to find it empty. An hour later, deep underground, Jackson stopped to rest. The woman's condition was worse now. Her skin was turning pale blue. The parasite was adapting, fighting his sedatives. Jackson sighed and looked at Miri. I need something special to save her, he said. A serum, the kind only found in restricted labs. Miri looked up. Where do we get it? Jackson hesitated. There's a place, the Vault of Rexon. But it's dangerous, guarded, and I'm not allowed there. Miri clenched her small fists. Then I'll go. Jackson blinked. You? I'm small. I'm fast. I can sneak in. I'll do anything to save my mom. For the first time, Jackson saw not just a scared child, but a spark of fierce determination. This little girl had nothing left, but she still had fight. He smiled, though he was tired. You're brave, Miri. Braver than most soldiers I've known. As they continued through the dark tunnels, Jackson's mind burned with questions. Who put the parasite inside Miri's mom? Why label her as cursed? Who wanted her silenced? And why was a human suddenly in the middle of it all? The deeper they went, the more Jackson understood. This wasn't just about saving one life. It was about exposing a secret someone wanted buried forever, hunted for helping. The underground tunnels of Khazar 7 were cold, damp, and filled with whispers. The lights flickered dimly, powered by old city systems that no one had cared for in years. Jackson and Miri moved carefully through the narrow passage, pulling the hover sled with her unconscious mother floating behind them. They didn't speak much. They couldn't. The sound of boots echoed in the distance. Someone was following them. Jackson paused at a corner. He pressed his ear to the wall. Click, clack, click, footsteps, metallic, heavy. They found us, he whispered. Miri grabbed his hand tightly. What do we do? Jackson looked back at the hover sled. The woman's body was trembling again. The sedative was wearing off. The parasite was waking up. Time was running out. We need to hide, he said. Just for a few minutes. He led them into an old maintenance room. Inside were broken machines, rusty tools, and a cracked monitor still showing the words, Biohazard Protocol active. Jackson shut the door and locked it. Then he pulled a tattered cloth over the sled and crouched beside Miri. Outside, the me sounds grew louder. They're nearby, said a voice, cold, robotic. Human heat signature detected. Confirm and neutralize. Jackson clenched his jaw. These weren't just enforcers. These were trackers, elite hunters designed to find fugitives. And now they were after him for the crime of kindness. Minutes felt like hours. Miri breathed quietly, her face pressed against Jackson's coat. Then, from the monitor, a sudden flicker, movement in the system. Incoming alert. Subject 042. Identified. Jackson. Froze. That code. He typed quickly into the dusty console, overriding the alert. A file opened. Subject 042. Experimental host. Status. Escaped. Threat level. High. He blinked. It was her. Miri's mother. She had been a lab subject. Not sick. Not cursed. She was running from the people who had put that thing inside her. Jackson felt sick. They weren't just hunting him. They were hunting her. To erase the truth. He stood up quickly. We need to move again. They're not going to stop. But where do we go? Miri asked. Jackson looked at the map. There's a tunnel that leads to an old medical bay on the surface. I know. Someone there, a doctor. She might help. He didn't mention the risk, didn't mention the price. He just knew one thing. He had to get them out before the next shockwave hit. But as they exited the room, the tunnel exploded. Boom, smoke, fire, screams. A tracker drone dropped from the ceiling and aimed a stun blast straight at Jackson. He pushed Miri behind a pipe and rolled to the side. The blast hit the wall, sparking metal everywhere. Jackson pulled a small EMP spike from his belt and threw it. Crack. The drone collapsed, sizzling. Another one flew in, targeting the sled. Destroy the host, it said. No, Miri screamed, jumping in front of her mother. Jackson moved fast, grabbing a broken pipe and smashing the drone from above. Sparks flew. The tunnel went dark. Only the sound of heavy breathing remained, and the quiet whimper of Miri. Jackson kneeled beside her. You okay? She nodded, though her face was pale. I won't let them hurt her. I won't. He smiled gently. Neither will I. They finally reached the surface. The air was dry. The city lights in the distance were blurry from smoke. Jackson pushed forward, dragging the sled across rubble, passing broken signs and burned walls. This part of Khazar 7 had been abandoned long ago. At the edge of the city, they found the old clinic. It looked dead from the outside, windows boarded up, paint peeled. But when Jackson knocked 3 times, a small camera popped out. A voice came through. Code word? Jackson coughed. Skyburn. The door opened with a click. Inside stood a tall woman in a white coat, half her face replaced with cybernetics. Her eyes scanned Jackson, then fell on Miri and her mother. "Jackson Ward," she said. "What mess have you dragged in this time? The kind that could cost us everything," he said, "but if we don't try, she dies. And a secret dies with her." The doctor sighed. "Bring her in, quickly." Inside the clinic, machines roared to life. Lights turned on. Sterile beds and glowing screens filled the space. It looked like a battlefield hospital from a forgotten war. Jackson watched as the doctor attached scanners to the woman. Her face darkened. "You weren't joking," she said. "This parasite, it was made to learn. It grows stronger by resisting help. Can you stop it?" Miri asked quietly. The doctor looked at her and then at Jackson. "Maybe," she said. "But we'll need a forbidden cure. One that was never supposed to exist." Jackson stepped closer. "Where?" She looked him in the eyes. "In the vault of the ones who built it." And just like that, Jackson knew. His fight was just beginning. The parasite was planted. The sterile white lights of the underground clinic flickered as the doctor's hands moved fast across the scanner. Her name was Dr. Elra, a cybernetic medic once exiled for exposing truth. Now she was the only one brave enough to even touch the infected alien woman on Jackson's sled. Jackson stood still. Miri gripped her mother's hand tightly, whispering, "Stay strong, Mom, please." But her mother didn't move. Her body had stopped shaking, but her skin was cold, her breathing shallow. Inside her spine, the parasite had gone silent. Too silent. Dr. Elra frowned. "That thing, it's hiding." Jackson leaned over. "Hiding?" "Yes," she replied, typing fast on the console. "It knows we're trying to fight it. It's gone into stealth mode, waiting for the next moment to strike." Jackson looked at the screen. The parasite now looked like a twisted metal flower blooming across the nerves. It wrapped around everything, and in the center was a glowing chip. Something was embedded inside it. "Can you zoom in?" Jackson asked. Dr. Elra did. The screen adjusted, revealing a small inscription on the chip. "Property of Project Nexus. Subject ID. Lyra 7. Status." Expunged Miri gasped. "Lyra, that's my mother's real name." Jackson stepped back. A cold chill ran through him. She wasn't just a random victim, she was a target. Dr. Elra walked to a drawer and pulled out a sealed file. She slammed it onto the table. "Nexus was a Black Ops program," she said. "Illegal research, genetic weapons, parasite control, and biological hacking. I helped shut it down 20 years ago." She opened the file. Inside were pictures of test subjects, aliens hooked to machines, their bodies torn apart by implants. Then, one image stopped Jackson's breath. It was a younger Lyra, strapped to a chair screaming while metal tendrils dug into her back. Miri saw it too. Her voice cracked. "She was one of them?" "Yes," Elra said, "but she escaped, and someone wants her erased. That parasite? It's not a disease. It's a kill switch." Jackson's fists clenched. They planted this thing inside her, like a time bomb, then waited for the right moment. "Correct," said Elra, "and now that you interfered, they'll hunt all of you." Outside the clinic, shadows moved again. In the sky, a silent black drone hovered. Invisible to the eye, it sent a signal back to its command base, target located. Comment sweep. Back in the clinic, Jackson looked at the glowing chip again. "This thing, can we remove it?" Dr. Elra sighed. "Not without the serum. It's a countercode, stored in a military vault. If we try without it, her nervous system will collapse." Miri's voice was soft but strong. "Where's the vault?" Jackson already knew the answer. Rexon Core, Sector 9, the Fortress Lab, a place where the government buried secrets. It was also guarded by drones, traps, and a kill-on-sight order for all intruders. "We'll never make it," Elra said. Jackson looked at her. "I've broken into worse." Elra raised her cybernetic eyebrow. "You had a team then?" "I have one now," Jackson said and turned to Miri. The child straightened up. I'll help. I can crawl, sneak, distract. I'll do anything to save her. Elra laughed darkly. You two are either brave or mad. Both, Jackson replied. And we're not going to let her die while a government hides the cure. Suddenly, alarms blared. Elra's screen flashed red. Intruders detected. Perimeter breached. Drone. Units inbound. Jackson grabbed his pulse pistol. They found us! Go! Elra shouted. Take the side tunnels. I'll draw them off. But, Miri tried to speak. I've lived a long time, Elra smiled. But your mother might still have years left. Run! Jackson scooped up the data chip from the scanner, wrapped Lyra tighter in the thermal blanket on the sled, and motioned to Miri. They sprinted into the shadows of the maintenance tunnel as explosions shook the clinic walls. Behind them, the last thing they saw was Elra standing tall, facing the invaders with sparks flying from her cybernetic arm. The escape route was narrow, twisted, and dangerous. Miri helped guide the hover sled over debris as Jackson held the scanner and data chip close to his chest. They didn't talk much, but their eyes burned with purpose now. This wasn't just about saving a mother anymore. It was about exposing the ones who hurt her. The humans break in. The night sky over Sector 9 was pitch black. No stars, no sound, no hope. The Rexon core vault stood in the center of a forgotten crater, an ancient military bunker turned into a fortress. The entrance was hidden behind a wall of metal, camouflaged as rock. No guards outside. No lights, because no one was supposed to enter or leave. Jackson crouched behind a ruined transport ship with Miri beside him. He checked his pulse blade, strapped his scanner to his wrist, and pulled a black cloak over his head. Lyra, still unconscious, lay wrapped in thick thermal cloth on a silent hover sled. They left her nearby, hidden under scrap metal and camouflage netting. Miri kissed her mother's cheek and whispered, "We'll come back for you." Jackson placed a small device on Miri's wrist. "You see this?" he said. "It glows blue if I'm nearby, red if I get caught. You run if it turns red. No arguments." Miri looked up, eyes wide, but nodded. "Promise you'll come back." "I don't break promises," he said, though his voice shook a little. Jackson moved first, crawling over rocks, past broken fences and old rusted turrets. He paused at a cracked pipe and pulled out a thin wire. From memory, he mapped the old entry system. One wrong move, and the vault would fry his brain. He connected the wire to the security panel. A timer ticked down. 5, 4, 3, click. The wall shifted. A metal door slowly slid open, revealing a dark hallway lit by red emergency lights. Jackson whispered into his comm, "I'm in." Meanwhile, Miri sat alone beside her mother. Suddenly, a noise. She turned. From the shadows, 2 flying drones appeared, black, silent, and scanning the area. Miri's heart pounded. She grabbed a handful of rocks. She whispered, "Don't look here. Please." But the drone light blinked yellow. It had found heat. Miri made a decision. She stood up and ran in the opposite direction, screaming, "Hey! Over here!" The drones chased her instantly. Behind them, Lyra remained safe, still hidden. Miri disappeared into the shadows, leading the danger away. Inside the vault, Jackson moved fast. He passed broken lab chambers, shattered screens, and walls covered in warning signs. "Do not open. Project Nexus terminated. Authorized personnel only." He found the bio-vault at the end of a long corridor. A scanner blocked the entrance. It wanted a genetic key. Jackson reached into his coat and pulled out the chip he had taken from Lyra's parasite. He slammed it into the scanner. For a second, nothing. Then, beep. The door opened. Inside, the air was cold. White lights hummed. Rows of locked cases sat neatly in sealed walls. In the very center, a glowing case labeled Serum 7, Counteractive Neural Flush, classified. He grabbed it, but the moment he did, sirens blared. A voice shouted, from speakers, "Unauthorized access detected. Defense mode activated, Jackson cursed. He stuffed the serum into his belt and ran. Metal doors began to slam shut behind him. Turrets dropped from ceilings. Laser walls blinked to life. He dove, rolled, and sprinted through the maze. A door slammed just inches from his back, but he made it out. Outside, the wind howled. Jackson rushed back to where Lyra had been hidden. Empty. No Miri. No hover sled. Only a small red cloth left behind. He picked it up. It was Miri's scarf. His wrist scanner blinked. Red. His heart dropped. No. He looked around. Then he noticed a faint trail. Tiny footprints, some scattered rocks, and broken drone parts leading toward the forest edge. Miri had led them away. She had saved her mother. By risking herself, Jackson didn't waste time. He ran into the trees, following the trail. His flashlight caught flashes of broken branches and burnt drone metal. Finally, after half an hour of climbing and chasing, he found her. Miri was curled, up behind a rock, bruised and trembling, holding a sharp stick like a weapon. Jackson knelt. Hey, it's me. Miri opened her eyes. Did you get it? He pulled the serum from his coat and nodded. Yeah, you were amazing. Tears filled her eyes. She's still safe? Jackson smiled. Thanks to you. They returned to the sled. Lyra was still alive, but barely. Jackson opened the serum, carefully injected it into her spine. For one moment, nothing. Then her back arched, her mouth opened, and the parasite screamed through her body. Dark veins spread, then retreated, fading into nothing. Her body collapsed, limp but still. Breathing, alive. Miri cried, hugging her mother tightly. Jackson sat down beside them, exhausted. His arm bled from a cut, but he didn't care. They had won one battle. But he knew the real war was just beginning. Someone had created this parasite, and Jackson had just declared himself their enemy. The cure and the comeback, a single breath. That was the first thing Jackson heard. One deep, steady breath, after days of shallow gasps and silence. Lyra's chest rose and fell gently. The violent shaking was gone. Her face, once twisted in pain, now looked calm. The parasite was dead. Miri stared at her mother like she was seeing her for the first time. She's alive, the girl whispered. Jackson placed a hand on Miri's shoulder. You did it. No, Miri said, smiling through tears. We did. The three of them rested in the ruins of a collapsed watchtower near the mountain cliffs. Jackson had made a fire from broken drone parts and old wires. The sled was now a stretcher, and Lyra lay bundled in warmth beside it. For the first time in days, there was peace. But Jackson knew it wouldn't last. Not after what they'd done. They had broken into a military vault. They had stolen classified, medical tech. And most of all, they had saved someone the galaxy wanted dead. Later that night, Lyra woke up. Her eyes opened slowly. Confused. Blurry. She coughed and turned her head. The first thing she saw was Miri. Miri? She whispered. Miri's face lit up like 1,000 suns. Mama! She jumped into her arms, holding her tightly, crying without shame. Lyra, weak but smiling, hugged her back. Then she noticed Jackson sitting nearby, watching quietly. You, she said, blinking. You're human. He nodded. Jackson Ward, engineer, fugitive. Parasite exterminator, apparently. Lyra's voice cracked. Why would you help us? Jackson smiled faintly. Your daughter asked me to fix her mom. I try not to break promises. They rested for one more day. Then Jackson stood up. We can't stay hidden forever, he said. They'll come for us, they probably already are. Lyra looked at him with tired eyes. So what do? We fight back, not with weapons, with truth. Lyra hesitated. You want me to tell my story? You're the proof, Jackson said, that they lied, that Nexus isn't dead, that the government is hiding living weapons inside innocent people. Miri squeezed her mom's hand. Mama, they tried to erase you. Don't let them. Lyra looked at her daughter, and then nodded. The next day they left the mountains and headed for the city, but not through secret paths, not through sewers or shadows. They walked down the main street. Lyra, pale but alive, held Miri's hand. Jackson walked beside them, data chip in, his coat, scanner on his wrist and fire in his eyes. People stared, some whispered, some backed away, but others followed. By the time they reached the central plaza, a crowd had formed. Lyra stepped forward and faced them. Her voice was weak but steady. My name is Lyra 7. I was a test subject in Project Nexus. They told you I was cursed, diseased, dangerous, but I was only running from what they put inside me. The crowd listened. Some pulled out cameras. Some recorded live. Lyra held up the glowing parasite chip, now neutralized. This was inside me, made in a lab, planted to control, or kill. Gasps echoed. Jackson added, we stole the cure. The government didn't give it, we had to fight for it, and they're hunting us for surviving. Suddenly a drone flew down. A soldier in black armor dropped beside them, pointing a blaster at Lyra. Stand down. You're under arrest for breach of classified facilities and public disorder. Miri stepped in front of her mother. No! The soldier hesitated. Cameras pointed toward him. Dozens of them. And then, someone in the crowd shouted, You point a gun at a mother and her child? Another voice. Let them speak. The soldier looked around. He lowered his weapon and backed. Away. The crowd roared. Later that night, the news exploded across systems. Alien mother infected by government weapon speaks out. Saved by human engineer. Secret program Nexus exposed. The little girl who refused to give up on her mother. Back at the safe house, Jackson sat with Miri as she watched the news. You did good, he said. Miri smiled. Will they stop hurting people now? Jackson looked out the window. Maybe not all at once, but now they'll think twice. Behind them, Lyra came out with a warm blanket. She placed it around both of them. I still don't understand why you helped, she said softly. Jackson didn't answer right away. Then he looked at Miri, because when she grabbed my hand and begged me to fix her mom, no one else even looked, but I couldn't walk away, not from that. The child who taught them all. The galaxy would remember the day Miri stood before the council. Not because she was a soldier, not because she was powerful, but because she was just a little alien girl who loved her mother more than anything and refused to give up. The great chamber of the Galactic Council was built of gold and silver, high above the clouds of Capital Prime. Inside sat leaders from 100 species, gathered in silence. Cameras floated in the air. Billions watched the broadcast live. In the center of the floor, 3 people stood, Miri, her mother Lyra, and the human named Jackson. A counselor, tall and blue-skinned, leaned forward. Let the record begin. Subject, illegal experimentation. Under Project Nexus, citizen exposure, and government misconduct. He looked at Lyra. Do you confirm you were a victim of this operation? Lyra stood tall, though her legs were still weak. Yes. I was taken, changed, and silenced. I was told I was cursed, but I was only infected by their weapon. Gasps echoed in the chamber. Another counselor turned to Miri. And you, child, you started all of this? Miri didn't flinch. She took a step forward and said in a small, clear voice, I just wanted someone to save my mom. Nobody listened. Nobody helped. Only one person stopped. She looked at Jackson. The human nodded, proud but quiet. Miri turned back to the council. You called her dangerous, but I know my mother better than anyone. She never hurt anyone. She only wanted to live, and I didn't want to lose her. One of the counselors muttered, "A child, exposing a system failure." Another said, "This is not just a mistake, it is a crime." The hearing continued for hours. Evidence was shown. The parasite chip, the secret vault recordings, Jackson's med scans, and Elra's final video message, recorded before she sacrificed herself to delay the soldiers chasing Jackson and Miri. The key. Chamber fell silent at Elra's last words. "If truth dies in silence, then I'll make noise loud enough to wake the stars." At the end, the council returned with judgment. "We cannot undo the harm," said the lead speaker, "but we can begin to make it right." He turned to Lyra. "You are fully cleared of all false charges. You will be compensated, and your story will be preserved in the Hall of Memory." Then to Miri, "You have reminded this galaxy that hope can come from even the smallest voice. You will always be welcome among us." And finally to Jackson, "You broke laws. You infiltrated military vaults. But you saved lives, exposed a cover-up, and acted with honor. You are pardoned, and from this day, given full galactic citizenship." The chamber stood in applause. Outside, people cheered. Across planets, news headlines changed. From cursed to courageous, the mother who survived Project Nexus. A child's cry saved her world. Human engineer declared hero of the stars. But Jackson didn't care about fame. He just wanted peace. Weeks later, in a quiet city on a green world named Elevon, a new clinic opened. It was small but full of light. On the wall above the door was a simple plaque. "Hope heals here." Lyra stood at the front desk, now trained in medicine. Her hands still trembled sometimes, but her eyes were clear. Miri helped organize supplies, play with young patients, and tell stories to kids who were scared. And Jackson? He worked in the back room, fixing machines, patching bioscanners, and, sometimes, just sitting by the window and watching the two people he called his family. One day, a knock came at the door. A young alien woman stood there, holding a baby. She said, "I heard you helped someone like me. They say you don't turn people away." Lyra smiled. "Come in, we're here now." And just like that, the healing continued. Miri, now a bit older, began speaking in schools. She would tell her story, not just about the parasite or the vault, but about the moment that changed everything. "When I cried in the alley," she'd say, "no one stopped. They all thought my mom was cursed. Only one man helped. One human." Children would ask, "Weren't you scared?" Miri would smile. "Yes, but I was more scared of doing nothing." In time, the story became legend. Miri's drawing of that night, the alley, the shaking mother, and the human kneeling beside her, was placed in the Intergalactic Museum of Courage. It said in big letters, "One hand can save a life." Back on Earth, when Jackson finally visited his old home, people stared at him. Some knew the story. Some had heard whispers. He was no soldier, no warrior. But in one moment, in one dark alley, he had become something greater. A lifeline. One night, as stars blinked above Elevon, Jackson sat beside Miri under a tree. She looked up at him. "Do you ever think about that first night?" "All the time," he said. "I still hear you screaming in my dreams." Miri leaned her head on his arm. "I'm glad you didn't walk away." He chuckled softly. "Me too, kid." Then she asked, "Do you think others will help like you did?" Jackson didn't answer right away. He looked at the stars, then said, "Maybe not all will, but someone will. Someone always does." And in that moment, across the stars, a child cried out somewhere, and someone else stopped to listen.